It's time to layer up! In today's stylish card making techniques with Jenny, I'm going to show you how I use different mediums in combination with layering dies to add depth and dimension to my project. I'll show you all the steps it takes to make this card today, so stay tuned. Hi guys, it's Jenny. Welcome back to another stylish card making techniques with Jenny. Today I'm featuring this Painted Blooms die set. This is a layering die set. It's similar to the Craft-A-Flower layering dies. If you put all the pieces together using this handy layering guide, you'll create this gorgeous Painted Blooms spray. And I'm going to be showing you how I created it today by using lots of different mediums to add pop to my card. So first off, I'm going to die cut all my pieces. I actually want 2 of those large blooms and a bunch more leaves, so I'm going to die cut this twice. I'm using cold press watercolor cardstock here, and you'll see that I've adhered all of the pieces together, so that way I can lift off my dies, flip the cardstock around, and I don't have to play around with the dies again. I can just die cut another set really quickly and easily. And you'll see that pop of purple there. That is the brand new Altenew satin masking tape. It's great tape. A roll is going to last you a long time. It's a huge roll. It's really thin, this masking tape. It doesn't tear the paper. It's just absolutely brilliant. I've used it for ink blending masking as well. It's fantastic. Anyway, so I've die cut all my pieces, and I'm going to be using the new Hawaiian Shores brush and fine tip pens. These come in an array of colours, and I'm going to show you a few different ways to use them, but first let me give you a quick close-up look. I just pulled one of them from the set. This is the ultraviolet colour, and then to give you a look at one end of the pen, this is the brush tip. They're not individual brushes, they're sort of a synthetic tip. It's kind of bendy, it gives a little bit, it's great for colouring in. And then this is a look at the fine tip end. They are water soluble, which means you can watercolour with them, and that's what I'm going to be doing today. So I've got my watercolour brush, and I have this plastic watercolour palette that Altenew carries, and a pot of water off to the side here. And I have covered completely that bottom layer in clean clear water, and I want, because these main blooms are 3 layers, I want to get 3 different shades of purple, ultraviolet, from just one pen. So I want this first layer to be light, so I've coated it with clean clear water, scribbled on some of the pen on the palette off to the side, and then I'm picking it up with my watercolour brush and dropping it in, and that creates a really pale layer. For my second layer, I'm going to take a dry layer, I haven't added any water here, and scribble that same ultraviolet pen directly on, and then pull out that colour with a wet watercolour brush. And it does get a little tricky if you use your fingertip, because you don't want to leave a fingerprint there, so I use my tweezers just to hold it down. And for that third layer, I've taken the pen directly and coloured it in much more intensely with a very, very, very tiny amount of water. I'm going to repeat this technique, and using just green this time. I'm going to colour in just the bottom layers of the leaves and then pull out with a water brush, and then on my second layer I'm going to colour in with a different colour green from the set. This is Evergreen, which is a darker colour green, and then that way I can get that same fade out, but I've got 2 different shades of green that layer on top of each other. And using the palette is really handy when you're fiddling around with very tiny pieces like this. Of course, there are plenty of other ways you could colour your layering dies. You can use coloured cardstock, you can use ink blending, but I like to do this just to add a little bit of depth and dimension, just a little bit more attention to detail. And I'm using the yellow from the set for the flower centres, and then I'm mixing 2 colours here. This is the crimson and that yellow together on my palette to create this nice coral colour for the bottom layer of those smaller flowers from the set, and then adding a little bit more crimson onto the centres, but just keeping it mostly yellow. And then I layered them up with liquid glue off camera. So I've got all my pieces dried and layered up, ready to go. Now you could leave it like that, but I'm going to take a second step and use mini blending brushes and blend around the edges of each of the pieces. I'm using the colours that go with what I've actually coloured them in with on my pens. So you can see that ultraviolet is here. This is my handy ink swatch that comes with each of the ink sets. I'm going to go for that one step down, that darker colour, the Andromeda Crisp Dye ink. I'm just going to pick some up on one of the blending brushes, make sure it's completely coated, and then I'm going to very lightly brush that on just around the outline edge, and it's just going to add a little bit of a sort of, I guess, dramatic edging to each of my pieces. And I'm going to match the colour for all of my pieces. So for the buds and for that those main florals, I'm going to use Andromeda. I'm going to use crimson again, going around the edge of the little flowers, because remember we mixed that crimson pen with the yellow, and so that crimson will be just dark enough. And then I'm going to use Hunter Green, which is the darker of the greens that matches those colours that I used on the leaves. I'm just going to pop around the edge of all of my leaves as well. Now for my final third step, I'm going to use some pure white ink spray. I'm going to give several blasts of that ink spray, and it's going to give these very fine misted droplets that just add, I don't know why I like it, it sort of pops, almost like when you add splatters to your projects. I just really like that kind of look, and it helps some of the ink blend in a little bit better as well. Now for my card panel background, I'm using these Circular Elements dies. I've chosen the one that sort of pops out a circle of smaller circles all the way around the centre, and I'm using it with the white wood grain cardstock. It's hard to see on camera, but it's actually got a wood grain embossed looking finish, and I've trimmed it to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. If any of those little circles get stuck, you can always use your tweezers to poke them out. And then I've layered up the back with Altenew foam tape, and I'm just going to pop that over a white note card. So it is white on white, but it gives that little bit of dimension with a bit more subtlety. I'm now going to arrange all my flowers and leaves and buds over the front of my panel. I'm using some foam squares here, and I'm going to add a couple of layers in some places just to get that dimension, and a bit of liquid glue here and there just where I arrange the buds and the leaves, so we can get multi-layered dies and then multi-layered dimension. It just gives it a little bit more life when you arrange it. And I didn't plan this out ahead of time. You could of course do that and use the press and seal method. I think I've seen JC do that before, but I don't plan ahead, and I just sort of arrange it how I see fit. Now I also added some clear gems to the flower centers, and for the sentiment I'm using this Note for You set. Has sorry dice and a sorry sentiment. I'm just going to die cut that out from white cardstock and then ink up my stamp and pop that over the top. And I am going to back it onto the same die cut from gold metallic cardstock, slightly offset, just for a tiny little bit of shine in the background. I've added liquid glue to the back of it, and I'm going to adhere it directly over the top of one of those blooms. It will hang off the end, just hold it down with a finger in place, and that finishes my card. I hope this has given you some ideas for how you can step up those layering dies and add a little bit more life to them when you create. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment. I love reading them.
Hello crafters, Jen here. For more tips, techniques, tutorials, and to discover which paper crafting products are right for you, subscribe to Altenew's YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Thanks for watching.